most of the messaging that people are getting from cold outbound is terrible. I see a lot of it myself, and mostly it's, hey, me pitching to you, and that's it, right? And it's like nobody cares, and it's like every other message that's in their inbox or every other cold call that they're getting. So, crafting good messaging takes understanding your audience and being able to personalize and customize the message based on what you know about them. And really being able to grab their attention and showcase or highlight some value.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes. And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by Collin Mitchell. Collin is dad of 4, a go-to-market leader with 3 exits under his belt. He's host of a podcast, a good podcast about sales transformation. So I need to be on best behavior, and currently serving as VP of Sales at Leadium. So it's helping sales organizations solve their top of funnel challenges. So Collin, welcome.
Hey, Fred, thanks so much for having me. I know it's been a long time coming, so happy to finally make it happen. And we've got some good topics planned out, so looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. We have reorganized it a couple of times, but good things come to those who wait.
Yeah, don't tell me that. I'm probably one of the least patient people you'll ever meet.
Oh, snap. Let's get to the point then, shall we? Come on. That's the small talk done. Tick. No, I mean, one of the things that we decided would be interesting to talk about, given your experience, what you're doing now, what you've done, and what's crucial to everyone in sales is prospecting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a kind of pretty big topic. But I thought if we talk about some must-do things, everyone's got to do this stuff, whatever industry you're in, kind of whatever role, get this stuff sorted. Otherwise, there'll be trouble ahead. And then we'll talk about some of what the top people do to really set themselves apart, why they are set apart.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's funny. I was on a podcast yesterday, and it's called Full Funnel Freedom. Really good podcast by a guy named Hamish, who is out of Canada and is a Sandler trainer. And I love that title, Full Funnel Freedom, right? Because we all know if you have a full funnel, then you're going to be, as a seller, you're going to be in a much better emotional and headspace, right? My wife actually comes from a sales background as well, and so anytime I'm little off, we'll say, to be polite, the first question she always asks me is, how does your pipeline look right now? So I think that if pipeline does solve a lot of problems for sellers, for sales leaders, and sales organizations, the problem is that a lot of sales organizations are doing outbound wrong. And there's some like basic fundamentals that I think, most people understand. Hey, you build a list and you reach out to those people on maybe, hopefully multiple channels. Some organizations tend to lean towards one channel over the other, meaning like some sales organizations might be more heavy with phone activity, where others might be heavier with social or email activity. So, at the basic foundation, part of the strategy is having good data. Right? Data is very accessible today. It's not as hard to source as it used to be. But the problem with the way people are using data is they're just stopping at the really basic stuff. Like, hey, here's the types of companies that I want to reach, right? Industry size, revenue. Here's the job titles that I think that I want to work with, right? Which could be above, below, or on the power line. And then we need their phone, email, and socials. And then let's reach out and see what happens. And they're expecting these, really junior, fresh out of college folks in these roles to have enough business acumen to, be able to start conversations about the problem. So that's how most people are going about it today. And I would say, most people are doing it at a very basic level. And then there's some very advanced stuff that, people who are having success with outbound are doing.
Yeah. I mean, before we come into that, I mean, you just said something, and it wasn't a throwaway, but it could be something that's easily missed here. It's a pretty important line. Business acumen to start conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite a biggie, isn't it?
It is because, a lot of there's a lot of these tools that are coming out today, right? Specifically AI, how to write the best personalized email, right? And a lot of them are gimmicky for the most part. Some of them, are decent. I wouldn't go as far as calling them great by any means. But what they miss is that human element, that connection, which AI can't replace, right? And what I'm talking about, that's like, hey, Fred, if I'm prospecting into you and, maybe I see that you visited somewhere on social that, I grew up, or maybe, I'm reaching out to somebody else and I see that, they went to the same school or grew up in the same area, or, you find some sort of human to human connection that can help you build and develop that relationship. That's what AI can't replace. And a lot of times, more junior people don't have as many experiences. So it's a little bit more challenging to build those types of connections.
Yeah. I mean, I saw something yesterday. It was a LinkedIn post. It's from a guy I know. And we're going slightly off topic here, but I think it is relevant, where
Yeah.
he was talking about the fact that he was interviewing somebody for a job. And this person came superbly prepared. They've got a file, they've got all sorts of information about what it is they were going to talk about. And they thought, hey, this is really good. And they looked at it and they're reading it. And we're in the UK, right? And some of the things were spelt with Z. Wonder where this has come from. So deliberately probed what the person's understanding of the file he presented was and didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Literally pulled straight from GPT, raw, stuck in there. Look how much I know. What do you know? Well, nothing. And just let themselves down massively. That's got to be a bit of a clear and present danger at the moment, hasn't it? For salespeople,
Yeah.
I mean, this guy was trying to sell himself in a job, but for salespeople, is to rock up all this stuff. I know. Look at this. I know your problems, Mr. Prospect, Mrs. Prospect, but you don't.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you gotta be careful in how you use it, and you can't like fully rely on it, right? There's a lot of times people are using it in a really basic way where they're not allowing it to build up enough context, to really have some good outputs. And so, they're kind of shortcutting it, but there is a lot of people that have, had some not so great experiences with it as well.
Some learning opportunities, Colin.
Yeah.
Fingers burned a little. Okay. Because there's some bloody good stuff we can take, and it can save so much time, and it can get us thinking, and we can test stuff and play with stuff. But just taking it raw, I think we've got to be a bit careful. Yeah. Okay. So go back to stuff you're saying about the data, and sort of rather than just using the basic, so phone number, email, socials,
so
what can we do to turbocharge that?
So I'll back up a little bit, because I think that there's one key element, right? Because we kind of started of like, hey, what's kind of the basic table stakes of how people are doing outbound today, right? And we kind of covered that, but there's one key component that I think a lot of outbound, let's call them outbound motions, are missing, and it's strategy, right? They lack strategy. And so part of the strategy is, yes, the data, but the things that people are often missing is like setting proper goals and expectations, defining like what success is. That could mean, hey, maybe we're testing a new market, right? Because a lot of times people start these outbound programs thinking we just need meetings. We need more meetings. And a lot of times it's not necessarily more meetings. It's the right meetings, or it's testing the market to get the right messaging that's going to land, or trying to get to product market fit, or trying to get feedback to build the product properly. I mean, there's a lot of different ways where you can go outbound, but a lot of people just think it at a very basic level. We need meetings. We need more meetings. Well, what type of meetings? What's the value of those meetings? How many of those meetings need to convert? Right. And a lot of times it's not necessarily, hey, we need 20, 30 meetings. It's like, we need 3 that'll close, So part of it is having those proper expectations, defining what success is or isn't. And then from there, you have a bit of a hypothesis, right? We're going to reach out to these people on these channels, and with this message. But before you get into messaging, a lot of people go straight from that right to messaging. And there's a lot that can be unpacked with data. People are using just that basic level stuff that I mentioned before, where they're just getting, titles, industries, maybe employee size, revenue, email, phone numbers, and social channels, and then hit go. But there's things that you can look for, like triggers. So triggers can be really helpful. And these are things that I'm talking about, is like job openings, recently in a role, funding rounds. Those are just a couple of examples, but those are things that you can use as different segment points that you would craft different messaging for, because people with those different trigger points are going to, there's different messaging that you can use where it then feels like, hey, this message is right time for me, written for me at the right time. And then from there, we can get into like technologies, right? A lot of people are doing this today, but we can identify what CRM they're using, what web technologies, and so on. These are all other segmentation points where we can send different messaging. Then we can do personality insights, right? Is this a dominant, influential, steady, or calculative person? Because they all have different communication styles. That's another variation of messaging for those people. And then we can get into the personalization stuff, which takes, a lot of times you can use tools for this, but sometimes it's just manual research of, things you can find on their socials, the news, Google, website, things specific to their geography. And then, if you've built out good personas, you actually then have different pain points for people as well. So if you look at data from that perspective, there's all these different variables or and if situations or segment points where you can send very personalized messaging based on what you know about that person.
Oh, awesome. Well, a couple of things I've been scribbling away. You can see me here. So there's one. Again, I'm going to go off on the side a little bit, because this is a position you've been in. The recent role and just had funding triggers. Are they actually any good? Or is that the worst time to ring somebody? Because a recent role, I mean, you're going to be pretty busy. And funding, it's like, yeah, someone gave me a load of money and I got no plan whatsoever how to spend it. They just dumped it in my backyard. Or, I mean, are you kind of barking up the wrong tree on those? Or I don't know. Am I old and cynical, Colin? That's probably what I'm asking.
You said it, not me, but
you're too polite.
I'm just feeling. No, they are. It's part of it shows that you care enough to pay attention. Like, hey, and so let's say funding round is a little bit of a tricky one because a lot of people are using that trigger, right? So they're just getting hammered. Hey, you got money, I want some. Like, but there's a way to do it, tactfully, right? And to tie it in with what you do, and to tie it in with some problems that you think or pain that they may have that you can help solve, right? And they're probably looking to deploy that capital somehow for growth, right? There's a lot of pressure once they've raised money to perform. And depending on what you do, that should tie into that, right? So that's an example. Now the new role is, people often think that like, hey, they're busy, they're in a new role. Let me let them settle in. And it's actually the perfect time. I mean, senior level people, typically they make the most change in the first 6 months. So if they come in and they're in a new role, how they were doing things before, a lot of that stuff's going to get shaken up. And so it's the perfect time to implement a new solution, bring in, a new, service provider for something to solve a problem. So, they're looking to, make a name for themselves and do some good work. In that first 6 months is the perfect time to make something happen.
Yeah. I'm not that cynical. I do actually do that stuff myself. I saw somebody the other day, quite a senior director, he got a new role, and it was on LinkedIn, but yeah, new role. Same mobile? ? That was all I sent. The guy goes, yep. Next message was
Yeah.
nearly fell over self trying to update CRM.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, it is. As you say, it's recognizing, and if not like pestering, oh, here's the slide deck that you'll be needing to study my excellent offer. Like, no, go away. Just, okay, recognized on your side type thing.
Yeah. And part of it is just, having good tact in your messaging as well, right? It's not like, which is kind of the next rabbit hole we can go down, right? Because most of the messaging that people are getting from cold outbound is terrible. I see a lot of it myself, and mostly it's, hey, me pitching to you, and that's it, right? And it's like nobody cares, right? And it's like every other message that's in their inbox or every other cold call that they're getting. So crafting good messaging takes understanding your audience and being able to personalize and customize the message based on what you know about them, and really being able to grab their attention, and showcase or highlight some value. And a lot of times, these messages, whether it's a cold call pitch or, a pitch slap in LinkedIn DM or a cold email, typically these messages are way too long. And, they really need to cut a lot of fat and fluff and be a little bit more concise. You can proactively, address some objections that you might have. But the thing with outbound is a lot of people view it, they have this mindset of, I got to book meetings. And so their strategy is all around, I got to book meetings. Their messaging is all around, I got to book meetings. And the real goal of outbound as a acquisition channel is to get conversations started, right? And so that mindset shift alone will change strategy and messaging. And so that's like a simple thing of a simple exercise that you can do to really change how you approach it. And the thing is, people are not testing and optimizing enough. There's people who think that SDR, BDR, outbound should roll up to sales like, hey, it's prospecting, it's a sales activity. And you might believe that too. And I actually used to, but really outbound programs that do super well, and I'm not saying they have to report to marketing, but they are treated like a marketing campaign, because if you think about it, it's a acquisition channel. And the big difference with how sales-minded outbound programs are being ran versus marketing-minded outbound campaigns. Marketing, when they're spending ad dollars on a campaign, they are testing, they are optimizing, they are, constantly reiterating and fine-tuning to get the perfect customer acquisition cost, right? And sales doesn't do that. It's like, hey, just hire more people, send more messages, see what happens, right? If you ask a lot of, senior sales leaders or, business development, VPs of business development, how often they optimize their sequences, it's laughable.
Oh, interesting. No, it's you've really made me stop and think here a little bit, because I probably would have given you an easier answer, but I think I'm in the process of changing. I've been writing a little bit recently about the ABCs of customers. Like, they're more advanced, they're further down the track because they've got enough information and they're trying to sort stuff themselves because they don't have any value from salespeople because they're not telling them anything new. And they're more biased to the stuff that they know, that they've already worked out for themselves, and they like it and they're not going to change that. It's all in their court. But they're also more confused because we're in a confusing world with a load of other stuff going on. And so I am moving towards the fact that, we need to meet them where they're at, I think is a phrase that I'm hearing quite a lot, I quite like, or kind of move backwards in the process, backwards along the customer buying journey, and kind of be giving them useful stuff there if that's how they're going to act. And that, having a meeting is just too early. Why do they want to do that?
Yeah. I mean, frankly, I don't care who this SDRs and BDRs report to, like sales, marketing, CRO, doesn't matter. What I'm saying is it needs to be treated like an acquisition channel, and it needs to be constantly monitored, and decisions need to be made by data and analytics. and optimized for performance and always be testing new things. Like that's how marketing campaigns are ran, right? They don't just throw some ad dollars on Facebook and be like, it's not really working. Let's just throw some more money at it and see if that works, right? And that's what sales organizations are doing with their outbound programs. Hey, we need more meetings. Great. Hire more SDRs, send more messages, make more calls. And that's the strategy.
And that's an old strategy, isn't it? I mean, that even the SDR model, I mean, I come from a different industry anyway. Really, all the work I've done has not been in tech or SaaS.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of
industries, it a bit odd, but it's just it was very, very successful, wasn't it? It was hugely successful 10 years ago. I mean, has it kind of run its course? Is it, or just not? It needs to be doing something slightly different.
It's an interesting perspective, right? Because I also came from a full cycle type of sales environment, right? Where it's like, hey, you self-sourced all your own deals. If you got a lead from marketing, like you're lucky, and it probably wasn't very good anyway. But but yes, in tech, this SDR BDR model, became very successful. Things have changed a lot. Like I'm seeing a lot of SDR, BDR teams be reduced because frankly, they weren't performing at the levels where it made sense from a profitability standpoint. And so you do see more companies outsourcing that now. You do see more, even in tech, saying, hey, AEs need to prospect more. Not that they didn't have to before, but they have, they have a higher quota of self-sourced deals than they ever used to. Or you see, less SDRs supporting, maybe multiple, the ratio of SDR to AE has changed. So a lot of things have changed. And I think part of that is, sort of this reset, specifically in tech of some more, realistic things like, hey, profitability actually matters. We're not going to give you this crazy 50x, valuation based on nothing. So a lot's changed.
Yeah, the great reset. But yeah. So they're outsourcing and saying, we want more meetings. I don't know if people are outsourcing correctly or not, or hopefully the people who are there to outsource to are selling well and guiding and giving the right kind of advice as to what they should be doing or could be doing, perhaps.
Yeah.
So let's come back to the messaging, because whatever industry you're in, whether it's some of my mates who sell trucks or sell beer or sell IT hardware and all this kind of stuff, you're trying to get in touch with customers. We've got to give them a message that kind of piques their interest, gets curiosity, shows that you are actually thinking about them and starting the conversation. So again, you were mentioning some of the things there, and I've heard you say the word personalization at least twice, maybe 3 times, probably 4.
Yeah.
What do you mean by personalization?
Yeah. So people often think that personalization is just this like, hey, one-to-one. You can personalize at scale. And there's a lot of people that would disagree with on that.
And don't get my podcast shouted off air by saying things
and
like that.
If you're one of those people and you're listening, send me a DM. I'm happy to debate it and defend it with you. Because what is personalization, right? It's not like, oh, hey, Fred, saw you went to this, university. Go, whatever your mascot is. That's not personalization, right? And frankly, you can fake that with AI today anyway. So personalization means, hey, whether I took the time to find out more about you, Fred, right before I sent the message, or whether I was smarter about it, more strategic and more efficient, like what I talked about when we put the data together, right? Getting all the basics, but then looking for any triggers, looking for any technologies that you might be using, understanding your personality, finding out some things from socials, news, Google website, geography, whatever. I know your pain points based on your persona. Those are all the things that I can do to personalize the message that's written specifically, for Fred. I can even look at your digital footprint and see, what your writing style is and write it in your style. I can see your personality and write it based on the things that I know are most important to you. I can see what technologies you're using so that I can call that out in my messaging. Those are all of the things that I can do to personalize a message for you. And I can do it for everybody else. And whether I do all that with a combination of, research and tools prior to putting it in sequence, or whether, I want to live in the caveman times and one by one, research Fred, send a message, research the next person, send a message, research the next person, send a message. I mean, it really is a stupid debate, in my opinion, because people are saying, no, you can't personalize at scale. You have to individually do it and send one by one messaging. And what does it matter if I do it in advance, in bulk, use a combination of tools and research, format that data? Most people can't format that data properly in a way where they have these variables and segmentation points to then pull off sending personalized messages to people based on what they know.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking here is, the way I'm interpreting this is that if you're using all that stuff and you're doing this stuff intelligently, it's going to land, let's say, in my inbox. I'm going to read it, and it's just going to hit home. And I'm not even going to start thinking, oh, I wonder if a computer did that. I wonder if a robot did that. I wonder if Colin did that. I wonder if he stayed up all night thinking about me. Because it's just like, oh, I'm responding to the message and I've not had time to do it.
Yeah.
It's only when it's a bit rubbish that you go, computer wrote that.
Yeah.
Or if it's quite good and quite personal, I don't know, maybe it's just my brain. I'm like, how have you done that to be so personal to me?
Yeah.
Because that is highly personalized. You've talked about my orange hat or something like that.
Look, ultimately, you don't care if it lands and it resonates and it piques your interest to get a conversation started. That is what matters. Whether I wrote it, whether it was a one-to-one email, whether it was a one-to-many email, it either lands or it doesn't, right? And so this debate is quite ridiculous. But there's been messages that I received that I know that they didn't take the time to one-off, write it, but it's so good and it's relevant that I replied because they picked the right person. They knew enough about me to write a good message, and it was something that was, relevant and top of mind for me. So that's ultimately what it comes down to. And so with the right strategy, with the right data and the right messaging, you can pull that off without, this one-to-one, sort of messaging that, people think is, I don't know, makes good LinkedIn content, I suppose.
It does. And I'm going to push back a little bit here because I'm about to write some stuff about doing it one-to-one and being very careful that you do a high level of research and really get this right, because it's such a big ticket gamble. And that is for selling at C-level. Do the rules start to change a little bit there? Or are you going, well, maybe a tad more, just run your human eyes over it, but still, I can do it well?
So I'm not going to totally disagree with you, right? But I would argue,
I knew there's a but coming, Colin.
you could still pull it off. You could still pull it off, because what I'm saying is you can do enough research at scale with, manual and human research and tools in advance for your entire list, and then hit go, right? I'm not saying, hey, come up with the, stupid stuff where who your college mascot was. No, doesn't work. Okay. But it also depends. It also depends on your market, right? Like if I'm a sales rep, if I'm an enterprise sales rep and I'm assigned a handful of accounts, I don't need to do anything at scale, right? If I'm say I'm a founder that sells and can only handle X amount of accounts, right? Because maybe what I do is very high ticket, very strategic. It depends. It depends on your market, your total addressable market, your role, how many people you have to contact. Like those are all things that definitely matter and could change some of these things that I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, you'd be going through your research sequence, as in, what's affecting people in this industry, because you're probably looking in a certain industry, hitting through the sector, general pain points, that kind of stuff. Okay, now I'm going to whittle them down, and now I'm going to talk to Collin at
Yeah.
Leadium. Let's just have a look exactly what's going on with him, and then spending the time and effort, because I'm only going to be reaching out to a couple. So yeah, blended
Yep.
or okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff. What was the other thing that I wanted to just go back to? So personalization at scale. Yeah, personalization at scale works. I think I've got a podcast title. Are you ready for your your inbox to blow up?
I'm ready.
Yeah, no, I
Bring it
just
on.
want to go back, because I think it's worth undermining, and we've said it a couple of times, but this fascination with meetings. Need meetings. I want meetings. I want to meet people. I'm going to rock them,
Yeah.
meet people. Okay, so if I got you them, what are you going to do? I think that's probably where that falls down, in that people, if they haven't prepped properly and understand it enough, like that chap with his CV and turning up, isn't going to have a good meeting anyway. So you're going to waste more than you actually achieve.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes if you ask them, why do you need more meetings? I don't know. What does it cost you to get a meeting today? I don't know. I mean, some of the things that you would assume, these, and I'm talking about sales organizations that are big, brands that we all know, tools that a lot of us use. Like, you would think they have their stuff figured out. A lot of times they don't.
Yeah. Because it was figured out before, when it was figured out, and it worked really well. And it's tough to change, which is ironic, because the salespeople, we sell change. Oh, that's a different podcast. That's a different subject completely. Salespeople not being good at change. Okay, this is really cool. Time has absolutely flown, and there's loads of other bits and pieces I'd like to talk to you about. But where can people get in touch with you? Where can the haters find you? Sorry, I
Yeah. I
can't
mean,
resist.
the best place, honestly, number one, it takes a lot of work to put on a good quality, podcast that releases, great content consistently. So the first thing you do, for Fred here is just write a review, rate the podcast, share it with your friends, smash the subscribe button, all that good stuff, just to show your gratitude for Fred having this, hosting this show, bringing people on and putting out good content. If you're an absolute, podcast junkie, kind of like myself, and you can't get enough podcasts, you can go check out Sales Transformation on whatever podcast app you're listening to this on. From there, you can pretty much find everything, whether it's newsletter, Leadium, LinkedIn, all that good stuff. But the podcast is a great place to start. We drop daily sales content to help you transform the way you sell.
Daily, sir. Daily.
And when I say daily, I don't mean Monday through Friday. I mean 7 days a week, 365.
How do you look after all those kids? How do you get all these exits done? How do you keep the pipeline full? How do you manage
It's just
day-to-day?
having a great team, makes it all possible.
Team and routine?
What's that?
Team and a pretty strict routine and way of managing yourself.
Yeah.
I think we have some other podcast episodes under our belt here.
I think so.
Oh, Collin, we'll put a link to that. We'll put a link to that in our show notes. So thank you for coming along, sharing your thoughts here, and yeah, hopefully we'll talk again soon at some stage.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the Collaborative Selling Scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.